welcome back to MCI Procedures. We're on procedure number 9, mixing and applying stain. A. Mixing stain. Number 1, measuring and recording measurements. Carefully measure all elements of the stain mix, such as water, bonding chemical, and pigments. B. Mix only a half cup to 1 cup at a time for quality control purposes, unless the supervisor instructs otherwise. C. When adding pigment, dig deep with the measuring spoon and mound high on the spoon. Then strike off and level the contents of the teaspoon with the leveling stick. D. When you change a recipe before applying it, stir 20 times. Then squeeze new stain in and out of the brush several times to get the new version of the stain up into the brush. It's important that you do that over and over and over again. Drain the brush, wet it, drain the brush, wet it, drain the brush, wet it, until the mixture that's in the brush is the same that's in the cup. And you're not staining with a mixture in the brush that's the old version of the recipe. Keep an accurate written record of the recipe you use initially and of all changes to the recipe. Give these records to your supervisor upon request and at the end of the job. Send pictures of the recipe to the job team whenever you develop a new recipe or make a change to a recipe. Number 2, mixing and marking. Use a piece of tape to label all your mixing cups to indicate what they contain. For example, you might label one cup as dark for the light bricks and another as light color for the dark bricks and another as mortar color A. Of course, you can also just label them A, B, and C if you're very, very sure that you can keep straight what those letters mean. Mix thoroughly with a brush before beginning application and each time you dip the brush. Applying stain. Number 1, check the weather. Unless your supervisor directs otherwise, do not stain a wall unless the air temperature is above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. 2, check the wall. Make sure that all areas to be stained are relatively free from surface dirt, loose particles, glue, oil, grease, asphalt, tar, paint, wax, rust, and any other foreign matter. Make sure it's unsealed, dry, and free of any acid or cleaning solution residue. Conduct the solution test for acid on every wall and conduct the litmus test on every wall that fails the solution test. See attachment 2B about acid testing. Number 3, stir thoroughly each time the brush is dipped. Stir in a figure 8 pattern. You want to get into the center of the cup and get rid of any pigment that's settled in the center of the cup, or mix that pigment into the slurry. Squeeze the excess solution from the brush by pressing against the side of the mixing cup. To keep from splattering the wall, drain the brush toward your body. Keep the metal band of the brush below the top of the cup. Tilt the cup as necessary to keep bristles out of the liquid while squeezing. Train the bristles by brushing them horizontally across the lip of the cup. 6, scatter the color. Follow your supervisor's instructions about whether or not to scatter the color. If the supervisor tells you to scatter the color until you are told to stop scattering. Unless told to do so, do not stop scattering because you're tired, or because the job is almost over, or because the job will go faster if you don't scatter. Failure to scatter can produce visible lines in the wall. It can hurt our reputation and even result in our not getting paid. Painters must start in one part of the wall and completely cover that part before moving on to another part of the wall. We are not painters. Stain is not paint, and the technique is different. Scatter by coloring a few bricks at a time in different parts of the wall. We recommend doing 1 out of every 3 brick on the first pass, or as directed by the supervisor. This will help the wall have a consistent range of color. Make 2 or more passes over the entire wall, staining the next third, and then finally the remainder of the brick. This is important because working on one area for a long time is likely to make the wall look uneven. Some good rules are do 1, skip 2, do 1, skip 4, and skip and move. Number 7, first application. Application is key. If the surface on a particular brick is so rough, for example, when the brick has a bark texture, that a single application will not color the entire surface of the brick, you may decide to stain the brick a second time while it is still wet. Do not use this technique to make the color brighter or more intense. See the supervisor for how to apply stain. So always check with your supervisor when you use a different technique. So if you're going to use a stroke that's wet on wet, or you're going to use 2 applications, make sure you have permission to do that. Drying the first application. When using stain to lighten masonry, the color will lighten as it dries. Do not make decisions about color until it has dried. Everything is darker when wet. Second application. After the first application has dried, you may need to make a second application to intensify or darken or lighten the color. Check with the supervisor. You may need to dilute or make a new mix or allow drying time before the second application.